You're walking to your car after work and you see something. Someone's being treated badly. Maybe it's a coworker getting yelled at in the parking lot by a manager. Maybe it's someone being harassed. Maybe it's something smaller but still wrong. A person struggling with heavy boxes while others walk past. Someone being mocked. Someone being excluded. Something that makes you uncomfortable. And you have this split second where you decide, do I look? Do I acknowledge this? Do I get involved? Or do I just keep walking? Pretend I didn't see, let someone else handle it, get in my car, go home, let it not be my problem. And most of the time, if we're being honest, we look away. We keep walking. Not because we're bad people, not because we don't care, but because getting involved is complicated. Getting involved has costs, social costs, time costs, maybe even job costs. And we calculate all of this instantly, unconsciously, and we decide that looking away is safer, easier, more reasonable. And then we drive home and we feel something. Not quite guilt, not quite shame, just this low-level discomfort, this awareness that we saw something wrong and did nothing. And we tell ourselves stories to make it okay. It wasn't that bad, someone else probably helped, it's not my place, I don't know the full situation, I have my own problems. And those stories work, mostly. We move on, we forget, until the next time. And the time after that. And slowly we become people who look away, who see harm and keep walking, and we don't even notice it happening. I've done this, more times than I want to count. I remember once seeing a situation where someone was being treated terribly at work, publicly humiliated, and I was right there, close enough to say something, close enough to step in, but I didn't. I looked down at my phone, pretended to be busy, let it happen, and walked away feeling like a coward, but also relieved. Relieved I didn't make it my problem. Relieved I didn't risk my position. Relieved I didn't have to deal with the awkwardness and the consequences of speaking up. And here's what bothers me about that moment. It's not that I failed some heroic test. I'm not a hero. Most people aren't. But it's that the decision to look away felt so automatic, so natural. Like that was just the default. Like, of course you don't get involved. Of course you protect yourself first. Of course you let other people deal with their own problems. And that automatic nature of it, that's what scares me, because it means I've practiced this. I've done it enough times that it's become my reflex. See something wrong, look away, move on. And if that's my reflex, what does that make me? There's a term for this, bystander effect, where the more people witness something wrong, the less likely anyone is to intervene. Because everyone assumes someone else will. Everyone diffuses the responsibility, and so nobody does anything, and the harm continues. Not because everyone watching is evil, but because everyone watching is doing exactly what I did, calculating costs, protecting themselves, assuming it's not their responsibility. But there's something deeper here than just psychology. There's an ethical question, not about what you should do in some abstract moral sense, but about what it means to be the kind of person who looks away, what it does to you, what it costs you, not in terms of guilt or conscience, but in terms of who you become. Levinas was a philosopher who thought about this, about the face of the other person, about how when you encounter another human being, especially one who's suffering, you're confronted with a choice. Acknowledge their reality or turn away from it. And he believed that turning away isn't neutral. It's not just nothing. It's an active choice to refuse relationship, to refuse responsibility, to treat another person's pain as not your concern. And that choice, repeated over and over, hardens you, makes you less capable of connection, less capable of empathy, less human. And I think he's right. I think every time we look away, we practice disconnection. We practice treating other people as background, as scenery, as not our problem. And that practice accumulates. It becomes who we are. Not dramatically, not in some villain origin story way. Just quietly, just gradually. Until one day we realize we're completely comfortable with suffering, as long as it's happening to someone else. As long as we don't have to see it or think about it or do anything about it. You see this everywhere once you start looking. Online especially, someone posts about struggling, about being hurt, about needing help, and thousands of people scroll past. Not because they don't see it, but because acknowledging it would require something, would require engaging, would require caring beyond a quick like or a sad emoji, and it's easier to keep scrolling, to let it be someone else's responsibility, to look away. And we've built systems that make this easier. Algorithms that curate what we see so we're not confronted with too much discomfort, so we can stay in our bubbles, stay comfortable, stay disconnected from realities we'd rather not think about. And those systems don't create the looking away. We wanted to look away. The systems just made it more efficient, more automatic, more complete. There's this joke, dark humor really, about a man walking past someone collapsed on the street. And he looks down, sees the person clearly in distress, and thinks, I should help. But then he thinks, but what if it's a scam? What if they're drunk? What if helping makes me late? What if other people judge me? What if I do it wrong? And by the time he's finished thinking through all the reasons not to help, he's already 10 blocks away. And he tells himself, well, if they really needed help, someone would have stopped. And that's basically how it works. We think ourselves out of helping. We rationalize ourselves into looking away, and we do it so quickly, so smoothly, that we don't even recognize it as a choice. It just feels like being practical, being smart, protecting ourselves in a world that doesn't reward altruism. But here's the thing, and this is what Levinas understood. The other person's face, their suffering, their need, it makes a claim on you whether you acknowledge it or not. You can look away, you can refuse, you can pretend you didn't see. But that refusal has meaning. That refusal is an answer. And the answer is, your suffering doesn't matter enough for me to risk anything. Your pain is less important than my comfort. Your humanity is less real than my convenience. And saying that out loud sounds harsh, sounds cruel, but that's what looking away means. When you strip away the rationalizations and the justifications and the excuses, that's what it is. A decision that someone else's pain is not worth your inconvenience. And I'm not saying this from some moral high ground. I'm saying this as someone who makes that decision constantly, who looks away constantly, who has internalized that calculus so deeply that it happens automatically. And I'm trying to understand what that means, what it costs, not just for the people I'm looking away from, but for me, for who I'm becoming through all that practiced disconnection. Because I think that's the real cost. Not guilt. Guilt fades. You can rationalize guilt away. The real cost is the slow erosion of your capacity to see other people as fully real, to see their suffering as something that matters, to see yourself as someone who has any responsibility beyond your immediate self-interest. And once that capacity erodes enough, you're not even capable of feeling guilty anymore. You're just someone who looks away. And that feels normal. That feels like wisdom. That feels like how adults navigate the world. And maybe it is. Maybe that's just growing up. Learning to look away. Learning to protect yourself. Learning that you can't fix everything and you can't help everyone and you have to prioritize your own survival. Maybe that's maturity. Maybe that's realism. Maybe people who don't learn that lesson are the naive ones. The ones who burn out trying to save everyone while their own lives fall apart. But I don't know. Because I look at people who've learned that lesson too well. People who've become really good at looking away. And they seem hollowed out somehow. Defended, protected, but also disconnected, also incapable of genuine relationship. Also going through life in this bubble where nothing touches them but nothing really reaches them either. And I wonder if that protection is worth what it costs. Levinas would say no. He'd say the whole point of being human is that openness to the other. That vulnerability to being claimed by someone else's need. That willingness to let someone else's face, someone else's suffering, disrupt your plans and your comfort and your self-protection. And that without that openness, you're not fully human. You're just a defended self. A fortress, safe but alone. And I feel the tension between these perspectives, between the practical need to protect yourself and the ethical cost of that protection, between the reality that you can't help everyone and the danger of using that reality as permission to help no one, between the fear of being taken advantage of and the risk of becoming someone who takes advantage of others' suffering, by treating it as invisible. There's no easy answer here. No formula. No rule that tells you when to look and when to look away. When to get involved and when to protect yourself. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the discomfort is supposed to be there. Maybe we're supposed to feel that tension every time. Supposed to make that choice consciously instead of automatically. Supposed to recognize that looking away is a choice with meaning, with consequences, with ethical weight. Because I think what happens when we make it automatic, when we train ourselves to look away without thinking, is we lose the moral weight of the moment. We lose the opportunity to choose. We just react, just protect, just disconnect. And that reaction, repeated enough times, becomes character, becomes who we are. And who are we becoming? What kind of people are we practicing being? People who see suffering and feel something, or people who've learned not to see, not to feel, not to let other people's reality intrude on ours? I think about this when I scroll past suffering online, when I see someone struggling and I keep scrolling, when I witness harm and I don't report it, when I see injustice and I look away, and I recognize I'm practicing something. I'm training myself to be comfortable with disconnection, training myself to see other people's pain as not my concern, training myself to prioritize my comfort over their humanity. And that training works. That's the scary part. It actually makes you more comfortable, makes life easier, makes you less burdened by the weight of other people's suffering. And for a while that feels like success, like you figured out how to navigate a harsh world without getting crushed by it. But then you realize the cost. The cost is you, is your capacity for connection, for compassion, for recognizing other people as real, in the same way you're real. And maybe that's just the trade. Maybe you can't maintain that openness and also survive modern life. Maybe you have to choose openness or survival, connection or protection. And most people choose survival, choose protection, and learn to live with the consequences. Learn to be the kind of person who looks away. But I keep coming back to those moments, those split seconds where I see something wrong and I choose. Look or look away. Engage or protect. Connect or disconnect. And I wonder what would change if I chose differently. Not every time. I'm not capable of that. But sometimes, more than I do now. What would that cost? What would that give? And I don't know. I genuinely don't know if looking away is survival or cowardice, if it's wisdom or callousness, if it's protecting myself or destroying something essential. Maybe it's all of those things at once. Maybe the ethics of it aren't clean, aren't simple. Maybe we're all just stumbling through, trying to figure out how much to see and how much to turn away from, how much to carry and how much to let lie. But here's what I do know. Every time I look away, I'm making a choice. I'm saying something about who matters and who doesn't, about what I'm willing to risk and what I'm not, about the kind of person I'm becoming through all these small, automatic, unremarkable moments of disconnection. And maybe recognizing that is enough. Maybe you can't be the person who always looks, who always helps, who always engages. But maybe you can be the person who knows what it means when you don't, who carries the weight of that choice consciously instead of defaulting to it automatically, who sees the face of the other person, even when you choose to look away. And maybe that's all ethics really is. Not being perfect, not being heroic, just being conscious. Just being honest about what you're doing and what it costs and who it makes you. Just refusing to let the looking away become so automatic that you forget it's a choice. You're walking to your car, you see something wrong, and you decide. And whatever you decide, you're practicing something, you're becoming something. And maybe that's worth sitting with, worth feeling uncomfortable about, worth carrying consciously instead of letting it happen unconsciously. Because we're all walking past something, all looking away from something, all protecting ourselves from someone else's claim on us. And that's probably necessary, probably inevitable. But it's not neutral. It's not nothing. It's a choice, with weight, with meaning, with consequences. And maybe seeing that clearly, feeling that weight, recognizing that meaning is the beginning of something. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe it just makes you more uncomfortable while changing nothing. But it's true. And truth, even uncomfortable truth, seems worth holding on to. Even when it costs, even when it offers no easy answers, even when all it gives you is the weight of knowing what you're doing when you look away.